in golf, there are an infinite number of correct ways to do things. You can watch PGA Tour events, the good players at your local club. So there's no right or wrong way to do things. However, there are easier ways to do things. And what I wanted to discover is what is the easiest way to do things in the short game. And you've heard a lot about using the bounce, okay, which is this part of the golf club right here. You know, you always have numbers on your wedges. This one has 7, which means there's 7 degrees of bounce, which that's the incline from the leading edge to this little flange back here, okay? You want to use this in the short game as much as possible because it prevents you from hitting that. When you use the leading edge too much, you get a lot of this. And the club digs, and that creates a lot of problems that everybody's familiar with. So what I wanted to discover is the easiest way to deliver the bounce that's not mechanical, that's simple, and that's easy to do. That's the important part of this. It's easy. So I wanted to equate this to some other skills in golf and in sports. So if I was going to toss this golf ball to a target over there, I would move my arm in this fashion. That creates a soft touch, okay? That's what short game is all about. It's about touch. And if you'll notice, my right wrist did not freeze, and I did not maintain that right wrist angle, okay? If I, in that tossing motion, maintained the right wrist angle, I'd have thrown the ball right down here in front of me, okay? No touch, okay? When the right wrist moves like this, that gives you a vertical shafted impact and delivers the bounce. Now, some of you are watching this saying, well, that's a flip, okay? That's only a flip if the right arm stalls, okay? If the right arm stalls right here, then you get a flip. As long as the right arm continues to move and the right arm doesn't stall, you're not flipping. You're delivering a vertical shaft to impact, okay? And you're delivering the bounce. And that prevents that digging motion. Instead, you get the club skipping on the ground. Now, again, someone's going to say, well, I'm going to blade the ball if I do that. That's an interesting point. The only way you're going to blade the ball is, again, if you stall the right arm. So if you keep the right arm moving, you can't blade the ball. This would be a blade. Right arm stalled, okay? If you keep the right arm moving, you don't blade, okay? The other thing that is involved in this chipping technique is people are always worried, how far should I take it back? How far should I finish? And all that. In this way of doing things, the easiest way to do it is just understand that you're going to move the right arm continuously, and we'll talk about some feels about that later, but you just want to keep that right arm moving, okay? And what's important is not so much the backswing. Your body will kind of manage the backswing to the target, like I only want to take it back this far to hit it to that target, and this far to a target way down there. What's important is the speed of the right arm, okay? I equate this to jump shots in basketball. If you watch a basketball game, when someone takes an 8-foot jumper and a 30-foot jumper, you don't notice a discernible difference in their technique. It looks almost the same. They're just applying more force to the basketball. In this chipping method, it's exactly the same thing. All you need to do is figure out how much right arm speed you're going to deliver to the ball to hit to a pin that's maybe only 20 feet or a pin that's 30 yards away. So a pin that would be up close, you're only going to use about that much right arm speed. Whereas a pin that's 30 or 40 yards away, you're going to use a little more arm speed. So that's the key to this, is understanding right arm speed. Okay, a lot of the short game stuff that we've learned over the years was, you got to accelerate. You have to accelerate, okay? And we end up hitting a lot of shots that look like this, okay? That has no touch on it. And that's too much right arm speed for that short of a swing, and the right wrist is never going to unload and deliver the bounce. So what's important is that we set the right wrist in the backswing to provide enough leverage. If I just went like this, that's not going to hit the ball anywhere. I have no leverage. So what you need to do is you need to change your perception of how to move the golf ball. Instead of a frozen right wrist and a lot of speed, you're going to set the right wrist to provide the leverage and unload it. And then you're going to be having less speed but more movement of the right arm, and that's going to provide more touch. So in other words, instead of this movement, you're going to be providing this movement. The important part of all of this is that you have this in the backswing to provide leverage. So this is where I have a little bit of change in philosophy. Most chipping techniques involve using the right wrist to control the club head. I've kind of switched that around a little bit. You want to let the weight of the club head control the right wrist. And a lot of people figure out how to use this method by just chipping with the right arm. And as you can see, if I just swing my right arm and let the weight of the club set and unset my right wrist, it unloads the right wrist perfectly and delivers a vertical shaft, okay? And look at how the club is bouncing through the grass. I'll even try to, see, I tried to stub that one a little bit and stick it, but because the bounce is hitting, it's sliding right through the grass, okay? Now, when you do that little short choppy motion, you can't unload the right wrist and deliver the bounce. You dig, okay? And if you freeze the right wrist, you don't give yourself any leverage, then you have to move the right arm too fast. And then that actually sets the right wrist on the downswing and looks like this. And then that digs. So what you're trying to do is swing the right arm and allow the weight of the club to control the right wrist, and that delivers the bounce. And all you're trying to do, just like a jump shooter in basketball, is judge how much force, how much speed is necessary to deliver the ball to the pin. And you don't control trajectory by moving the ball back in your stance. Because once you move the ball back in your stance, that's steep. So if the ball's back here, that now you can dig again. The other common thing that people have been taught, and I did this for a number of years myself, is open stance, okay? That also will cause steep. Now, I suggest a square stance, pretty square to the target, okay? Feet pretty square to the target. But even myself, I've even gone, and you might want to try this, into a little bit of a closed stance to shallow it out even more, okay? So the object of this is to provide as shallow a motion as possible. So the right wrist is unloading, shallow. Ball further forward in your stance, shallow, okay? Square or even a little bit of a closed stance, again, shallow. And the only thing you have to concern yourself with is making sure that right arm continues to move, okay? All of the mistakes in the short game, and even using this method of chipping, all of the mistakes happen when people stall their right arm. And what I mean by that is I call it hot potato. I see golfers, 20, 30 handicap golfers, this is the way they chip. Okay? It's like the club is a hot potato and they want to drop it. And as you can see when I did that, the right arm stalls. So when you're doing this, continue to think of the initial thing that I talked about, that tossing motion. If you were going to toss a golf ball that way, you wouldn't go like this. You'd go like this. And a good drill to get a sense of this is even on a short little shot like this, bring the shaft all the way up and rest it on your left shoulder over here, okay? What that does is that's going to give you a sensation that you're continuing to move that right arm. And all you have to do is judge the speed of the right arm to hit it to different targets, okay? So I've got a target here about 15 or 20 feet in front of me here. So all I need is a very minimal amount of right arm speed, but I'm not going to stall it right here. So even on this little shot, the right wrist is going to set, the right arm's going to move, and then the right wrist is going to unset with the weight of the club. As you can see, I'm chipping here off an extremely tight, thin, wet, damp lie, which is really easy to dig the leading edge on. And I just hit a shot that's straight downhill with left to right break and very little green to work with, and I had to carry plenty of fringe. And it was literally like I just tossed the ball up there. So now there's a pin further down that way. This is still a little downhill. It's probably, 30 or 40 yards away. And distance is not really relevant. What's relevant is it's nothing more than you're tossing a crumpled up piece of paper in a basket and you go, oh, it's kind of that far. You don't worry so much about yardage. You just picture in your mind, well, the pin is about that far away. So when it was the short one, it was this far away. Now that I'm going to go down to the end of the chipping green there, that is the beauty of delivering the bounce. I did not catch that ball cleanly. I hit slightly behind it and still hit the ball, on a downhill, side hill slope down to the other side of the green to a pin maybe 4 or 5 feet from the hole when I actually hit slightly behind the ball. And that's what's great about using this way, is even though the camera angle might have looked like I had the ball further back in my stance, it was quite forward, and the bounce allowed me not to make perfect contact and still give myself a chance to make a 4 or 5 footer for par. So here, if you watch, I'm going to hit another little shot to this pin, and it's not going to be the greatest shot in the world, but what you're going to notice is I'm going to hit a good 2 or 3 inches behind the ball, and I'm still going to deliver a decent result. So I'm going to purposely chunk this ball, but because I'm delivering the bounce, the leading edge won't stick, and I'll still get some sort of a result. And the important part, delivering the bounce, letting the right wrist unload with the weight of the club, and keep that right arm moving. That's the secret in all this, is keeping that right arm moving. So this is going to be a fat shot. I hit a good 2 or 3 inches behind that ball, and on a little delicate shot, I still have, only 3 or 4 feet past the hole coming back. So had I kept that right wrist angle and hit that same exact shot, the leading edge would have dug, and I'd have hit the ball about 2 or 3 feet in front of me, okay? And if you stall the right arm and hit it a little fat, drop kick across the green, the blade shot that everybody hates when they're trying to avoid the chunk. So again, all you have to do is just learn this simple motion of making sure the right arm continues to move and the weight of the club controls the right wrist instead of the opposite, where the right wrist controls the club. And you can see it's hard to keep the right arm moving when I do that. Or if I let the club control the right arm and the right wrist, the right arm keeps moving. So that is the secret to this, and that's the secret to most short game shots, is keeping the right arm moving and keeping the right wrist out of it, letting the club control the right wrist. Golf is repetitive. Getting better at golf is repeating the same correct motion over and over again. So my job as an instructor is to repeat the same things over and over again so they stick. So the next question is, well, what you're showing me is going to hit the ball high and soft. Correct. How do I control trajectory? There's a couple of different ways you can control trajectory. One, people will say, well, I'll just move the ball back in my stance. But again, you're making it yourself a little bit too steep there. If you keep the same general forward ball position and just lean the spine a little bit forward, that doesn't create quite as steep as if you move the ball back, okay? It is steeper because you're moving the spine this way. But this is one way to de-loft the club and do the same thing. Let that right wrist and arm unload, okay? Or you can just use more club. This is an L wedge. You can go to a sand wedge or even a pitching wedge to hit that low skipper, okay? So again, if you want less loft, less high of a shot, either lean your spine forward at address like this, or if you like that shallow move and you want to continue to just have the same motion, just use a little bit more club. Now, the one thing that chipping this way, you aren't going to get quite as much spin as you would in a quote-unquote conventional chipping motion where you're a little steeper and you maintain that right wrist, okay? You're using touch, trajectory, and a soft flight of the ball to stop the ball instead of lots and lots of spin, okay? Another reason why this is beneficial is when you're using lots of spin, unless you're a PGA Tour player practicing 4 and 5 hours a day on your short game, controlling that spin isn't always the easiest thing to do. So I see people all the time, they hit perfect shots, a little bit too much spin, it checks up 5, 6, 8 feet, 10 feet short of the hole, and they're like, oh man, I hit that one good. This takes that variable out. You get pretty much a consistent medium level spin, and you're using a soft touch to stop the ball versus trying to control the spin. So that's another benefit of doing it this way, a consistent level of spin and not spin levels that are all over the place and kind of being at the mercy of how firm the green is or how soft the green is and how much your ball is going to spin in reaction there. This kind of shot is going to react the same way every time. A lot of people, clients that I've taught this way of hitting the short game have told me that the easiest way that they find to do it, and you might find this an easy way to do it, is they feel like they're flipping the right wrist on purpose and then moving the right arm to prevent that from happening. So obviously if you just flip the right hand on purpose, that is in fact a flip, okay? But if the right wrist is being controlled by the club head and unsetting like this and actually bowing over here, keeping the right arm moving will actually deliver a vertical shaft, and that's what we're shooting for. And that's especially effective on a shot like this. I'm on a tight, thin lie. I've got to go over a bunker to a tight pin. Now, the normal way of doing this would be to fan the face wide open and hit the big old flop shot, but that's a dangerous shot, it's a difficult shot, and unless you're Phil Mickelson, you know, it's not the highest percentage shot. Whereas off of a tight lie, opening that face wide open, you're asking to, you know, blade the ball, to drop kick it, even if you keep the right arm moving. So on this shot, if I just keep that right arm moving and allow the club to unset my right wrist, I can hit a nice, high, soft shot over a tall lip bunker. So now that was nice and soft. It went over the bunker, came down soft, and it's just a few feet from the pin up there. So what it does is it just, in all of these shots, allowing the bounce to get in there, it just increases your margin for error. It allows you to make mistakes and still hit a clean shot. I'll hit another one, and I'm going to, again, hit behind this ball on purpose. Now normally, hitting behind a ball on a thin lie like this, you're going to drop kick it really, really bad, because the leading edge, if it doesn't dig and have you chunk it in the bunker, you're going to drop kick the ball. Whereas if I'm using a nice slow arm speed and delivering a vertical shaft, even if I hit behind it and drop kick it a little bit, my swing speed isn't so fast, I'm not going to blade it over the green. Now I hit a good 2 inches behind that one, and ironically enough, I hit it even better than the previous one. So when you're not using the leading edge to dig into the ground, you're taking away both the thin and the fat, because you're being forced to keep that right arm moving to keep the right wrist from flipping too early. So again, to repeat, you're allowing the club head, the weight of the club head, to control the right wrist, and you're moving the right arm to keep that right wrist from unloading too quickly. And as you can see, I'm not using a tremendous amount of arm speed here, because I'm delivering the bounce and getting a clean hit. So I made 3 different contacts on that ball. One a little bit thin, one a little bit fat, and that third one was perfect, and all 3 of those balls are within 3 or 4 feet of each other, because it creates a consistent result even if you don't contact the ball exactly right. And here's the benefit of this. If you catch it a little thin, the ball spins a little bit more. If you catch it a little bit heavy, the ball spins a little bit less. So the balls all end up in relatively the same place. And that's the beauty of delivering a vertical shaft and delivering the bounce. You don't have to make perfect contact, and you get consistent results. Hitting out of the sand is the thing that gives most golfers the most fear. And having been a pretty good sand player myself, I never understood it. But after teaching golf, I completely understand now. It is the shot in the game where your margin for error is just enormous, because you don't have to hit the ball first. As a matter of fact, you've got to not hit the ball first. And being a great sand player might be difficult, but getting the ball out of the sand and onto the green is the easiest thing to do in golf. It's exactly the same as all of the techniques I've talked about. You want to let the club control the right wrist, and you got to keep that right arm moving, okay? One of the greatest sand players on the tour is Rocco Mediate, and he told me when he practices sand shots, it doesn't matter the distance, he always brings that shaft up onto his shoulder. And what it does is it ensures you keep that right arm moving. Now, as far as setup is concerned, you're going to be using an open-faced club, so you need to aim a little bit left of the target. Not significantly left, just a little bit. And people ask me, well, how much do I open the club face? There's a really, really easy way to do it. Pick the ball position you want, because everybody wants a little bit different ball position. And just take the grooves on the club and point them to the outside of your left toe. So if you're going to have a back ball position, you're going to have a very open club. And if you've got a forward ball position, it's not going to be open quite so much. So it just makes sure that you're getting the club face open enough, and it's just an easy way to understand it. You're going to point the grooves on the club right here to the outside of your left toe. Now, you'll see a lot of people on the tour, a lot of players on the tour, and a lot of people teach that you're supposed to hit bunker shots like this, okay? Or be very, very vertical, okay? Not a real big fan of that. To me, that makes how much sand is in the trap way too much of a variable, okay? If there's a lot of sand in the trap, it's really easy to dig. If there's not much sand in the trap, that's a lot of speed and it's easier to blade it over the green. I like, just like all the other shots, getting as shallow as possible and getting that bounce in there and getting that nice thud. And when you're coming in shallower, how much sand you take really isn't that important. You just have to take some. And again, just like all the other short game shots, you are trying to gauge how much right arm speed you're going to need to get the ball to that target. And it is imperative that you do not try and hold the face open and to get the ball. Oh, I've got a tall lip here. Holding the face open is just asking to leave the ball in the bunker. The best advice I can give you on how to hit bunker shots is swing the club in a manner that you would think was like your normal full swing, just with the understanding that you're allowing the weight of the club to control the right wrist. That's the only difference between this sand shot and a swing that you're going to hit over on the driving range with a 7-iron. Instead of going for shaft lean, you're allowing that right wrist to bow with the movement of the club head. And you just got to keep that right arm moving. That is the key. And you just have to adjust how much speed you want. So that came out nice and high and nice and soft. And it's going to get over any lip. So now all I have to do, if I want to hit the ball a little bit further, is to use a little bit more speed in the right arm. Now that first one I hit got about 10 feet and barely got over the lip of the trap to a tight pin. The second one I hit went about 40, 50 feet past the bunker to the other side of the green. Pretty much the same technique, keeping that right arm moving. I just use a little more arm speed. And that's all you have to do. Now, there's a shot that you can hit, and it doesn't matter how easy you hit it. A lot of people who will short side themselves, and they'll end up with a bunker shot where they're just this far into the bunker, here's the lip, and then the pin's only about another 15 feet, and they panic. All you got to do is just use as little arm speed as you can and just make sure it keeps moving. So you can advance the ball just a couple of feet out of the bunker as long as you keep that right arm moving. So it's one of these. Okay? So I barely hit that ball. I advanced it about 5 or 6 feet. Okay? But I kept that right arm moving and I didn't stall. That is the most important thing in bunker shots. You can kind of do whatever you want as long as you have that club face open so the bounce is even more exposed. That's what opening the club face is about. And you got to keep that right arm moving. Don't let anybody tell you that this is going to be a consistent way of hitting bunker shots. There are good bunker players who do it that way, But the easiest way to do it, keep that right arm moving as much as you can. Okay, this is the one that scares everybody, the fried egg, okay? Now, this is something different. This is completely different than everything that I've talked about so far, about delivering the bounce and letting the right wrist unset, unhinge, uncock, whatever you want to call it, and being shallow, okay? This shot requires a steep move, okay? Because you don't want bounce, you want the club to dig. So what you do is you close the club face, okay? You close the club face and you almost want to picture yourself making an arc around the golf ball. And what that does is that makes the club dig, and then the force of the sand and the club coming through send the ball out. So that looks something like this. You want to lean your spine a little bit in front, take the club up a little more steeply, and dig. Okay? You got to release that golf club, okay? You almost want to roll it, okay? Unlike any other shot, I rolled that thing because you want that club face coming in really, really closed to get the ball out. Okay, for you more advanced players, the technique of hitting through this shot, the way I showed previously, that ball's going to come out kind of low with not too much spin, and it's going to run across the green. But you can try something a little bit fun here, and this ball will come out high and soft and not run across the green so much. And what you do is you use the same technique, closed club face, steep angle of attack, but as soon as you feel that ball or that club go into the sand, you recoil the club and the ball will come out higher and softer. It looks something like this. Okay? That shot will come out a lot higher and a lot softer than the one where you swing all the way through it trying to get the ball out of the sand and onto the green. This is only for advanced players, but if you practice it, you're going to be a little bit dumbfounded on how soft that ball comes out of that fried egg lie. But it does in fact take quite a bit of practice. Unlike the normal bunker shot, where if you just keep that right arm moving, after 10 or 15 balls in the sand, you're going to notice that the ball comes out nice and soft every single time. That's the important thing. In the sand, keep it simple. Take some sand, keep that right arm moving, and open up that club face to expose the bounce even more. The bump and run shot. Okay, a lot of people like to use this shot because it's under control, where you don't have much fringe to carry or much rough to carry, and you're going to run the ball with plenty of green to work with. And to me, I always used to do the hands forward, freeze the wrist, all that good stuff. And I found that you can still dig it doing that, okay? So it doesn't matter if you're using a hybrid or a 7-iron or whatever club you chip with. I use a 7. You still want to allow the weight of the club to control the right wrist. You don't want to be going in there like this because you'll dig, okay? It's the same theory, other than you do in fact play the ball further back in your stance if you want. You can play it anywhere in your stance that you want to. I like to play it off my right shin and toe. Now, again, it's not a flip. and you've got to keep the right arm moving. And I'll have one additional addendum to this. I like to stand very, very close to the ball and move the handle out, the grip out away from me. What that does is that moves the heel of the club off the ground and only puts the toe on the ground, okay? That gives you very little surface area to dig, because when you've got a hybrid or a 7-iron, you're not dealing with very much bounce. So the way you combat that is you take away what's going to dig, which is the heel of the club. So I stand right on top of the ball, get my hands out away from me, and keep that right arm moving. Now, because it's going to be a little bit shorter swing, you're not going to have as much wrist action, okay? It's going to be very, very little, but you don't want to freeze that right wrist. Let the weight of the club, and just keep that right arm moving. It doesn't matter if you're using a 7-iron or a hybrid or any other club. You don't want to sole the club like this when you're hitting a bump and run, because even a hybrid can dig a little bit. Now, I've put the ball in a really nasty divot right here. I mean, this is wet dirt, okay? And the club will dig in that if you get the leading edge in at all, even with a hybrid. So the way you combat that is you get really close to it and you get that heel off of the ground. So then you have very little surface area to dig, and that toe won't dig. And I am going to purposely try and chunk this ball. Try and dig the edge in and only hit the ball to right here. But you're going to see that because only the toe is on the ground, it won't dig even when I try to make it dig. So I purposely hit that ball fat and dug it in the ground and stopped and stalled my right arm. All the bad things you're not supposed to do, and I've said you're not supposed to do, but because I had the heel off the ground, the club was able to hit the ball and still hit a decent shot. So now, even off of an even worse lie, where this ball's in a hole, okay? Get the hands out, get the heel up, keep that right arm moving. And even out of the ball essentially sitting in the hole, I hit a clean shot. Okay, here's a fun little specialty shot that some of you might have some fun with. It works from several different lies, and generally all bad. Ball sitting down on some hard pan with rough around it. It's just a lie that you just can't get any club on the ball, and you don't have to hit the ball very far. As you can see, my ball is sitting in a really poor lie. It's on a little piece of hard pan, and there's grass all around it, and I really couldn't even get a bladed wedge on this. And I've got some fringe I got to go through, and then very little green to work with. You take out your putter. I call it the top putter shot. You play it behind your back foot, and all you do, you don't make much of an arm swing. All you do is set the club straight up, and you're just trying to literally top the ball, pound right straight down on it, and you're going to find you don't need to hit this very far. And what it's going to do is it pops up, and then it's going to trickle on and end up hopefully somewhere near the pin. Hinge and straight down on the ball. Okay, some of my clients have called this the voodoo green reading technique. When we read greens, we mostly just use our eyes. And what this does is this teaches you to use your sense of touch and feel as well. And it works up to putts of maybe 15 or 20 feet in length. It's especially effective on mountainside and oceanside courses where the greens are just confounding you. And what you do is you always, it doesn't matter where the break is, where the hill is. If you're a right-handed golfer, the hole is always on your left and the ball is always on your right, okay? Left-handers, you switch that. And what you do is you go, you look, hole, ball, and on the second look at the ball, you do not take your eyes off the ball, and you walk straight into it and set up, okay? If you're hitting a real putt, you can either take one look at the hole or see where your putter face is lined up in relation to the hole, okay? And then step back and line up to that same spot. One time, just to show you how fun this is, don't look. Just do the routine and hit the putt without looking, and it'll show you how accurate it can be. So, hole, ball, ball, and it just missed. So you can see that I didn't even look at the hole and I almost made it because this technique takes into account the feel of your feet and what your eyes are telling you what the slope is. And when you go out and try this, you're going to be absolutely amazed on some of the funky hills and funky breaks that you couldn't read normally that you're going to read pretty well using this technique. The secret to having a good short game around the greens is not what one tour player does it the right way. It's not what somebody has told you is correct. It's not what you can do on some miracle shot 1 out of 15 times. The correct way to do short game is if you drop 10 balls and you hit them, what is going to give you the best cumulative results, okay? Club choice, technique choice, shot choice. It's not about what's right. It's about what you personally can do. And that's what this method of allowing the club to control the right wrist, okay, delivering a vertical shaft to impact, and keeping that right arm from stalling and keeping it moving. That's what this is about. It's about a simple way to do things where you can be consistent and get the same results every single time. You don't have to practice this a lot. You get the feel for it once, and all it is just one consistent motion of just keeping that right arm moving and allowing the wrist to unload with the weight of the club and deliver that bounce to the ball. It doesn't matter if it's a good lie, it doesn't matter if it's a lie out of the deep rough, it doesn't matter if it's in the sand. You are trying to get that bounce delivered to the bottom of the ground underneath the golf ball, and that's going to produce consistent results no matter what the shot, no matter what the lie, and no matter what club you have in your hand. Then it's just up to you to figure out what club choice, what shot choice is going to be the easiest for you to hit the most consistent shots instead of that one miracle result like you saw some tour player on TV winning a golf tournament with.